Hi, this is Andrew with Mock Till You Drop, and in this video I want to talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies for those taking the Level 1 exam. I'm also going to discuss blockchain and distributed ledgers and how those relate to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. In this video I will be discussing a lot of technical terms, some that you may have heard of, others that you may not have heard of before. These will include terms such as blockchain, distributed ledgers, smart contracts, tokenization. So my goal of this video is to help you better understand these terms and to use examples that I think will be helpful in connecting them together. The last thing I want to cover in this video is my opinion about the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and how that could play a part in portfolio management. So definitely stick around to the end of the video to hear more about that. So by now you probably have heard of Bitcoin. Bitcoin can actually mean two different things depending on how you use the word. Most people probably think of Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency, which it is, but it can also be referred to as a network from which the Bitcoin cryptocurrency is transacted. And this network is what we call a permissionless network. In other words, all users on the network can see every transaction that occurs. And one of the key components of this network is that it doesn't require a central authority, such as a bank, to operate. So you might be asking yourself, why would people want to conduct transactions in a network where there's no privacy? What is actually being seen on the Bitcoin network with each transaction is a public key, which is a pretty long string of letters and numbers. Therefore, the transaction, while linked to this public key, isn't actually tied to anyone's name. You can think of this as a transaction on a stock exchange where you can see the time and size of the trade, but you don't know who the buyer and seller are. Now, the big question is, if you don't have a central authority like a bank to process these transactions, how does this actually work on a permissionless network like Bitcoin? And that brings us to our next term, which is distributed ledger. Now, to understand how a cryptocurrency works, I think you really need to understand what a distributed ledger is. You can think of a distributed ledger as a database that stores all transactions across a network and is shared among all of the users. And each of the user has a matching copy of this database. So now let's look at a visual to help our understanding of this. So there are three parts to a distributed ledger: the digital ledgers, the users of the network or nodes, and the consensus mechanism to verify all transactions. Now I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like without using too many technical terms. So let's say that you and your friends get together and you want to start a network where anyone in the network, basically it's open to anyone in the public, and you can buy or sell cryptocurrencies through this network. So it's a connection of you and your friends' computer systems, and anyone in the public can join this network with their computer system. On this network, there are all the transactions of this cryptocurrency. Now, obviously, the first transaction of this cryptocurrency must be started by your inner circle of friends. And anyone in the public can download the entire history of these transactions. And this is similar to the Bitcoin network. However, if you wanted to download the entire history of transactions on the Bitcoin network, you're going to need a pretty powerful computer, and it'll probably take a very long time since all the transactions date back to 2009. So now that you've created this network with your friends and opened it up to the public, the question is, why would someone from the public want to join this network? Well, there's an incentive. In order to verify a transaction between a buyer and seller, someone from the network must solve a difficult math problem using a computer. Once that problem is solved, it verifies that the transaction and that person who solved the problem receives a small fee for doing so in the form of a cryptocurrency. This is similar to the fees applied to transactions on a stock exchange. So after that person verifies the transaction, it will broadcast that transaction along with other transactions it verifies in a group to the entire network. So everyone on that network will then come to a consensus about the transactions, and that group of transactions will then be added to the historical list of transactions, which everyone on the network will have a copy of. Now, looking at this diagram, that history of transactions will be the distributed ledger that each user or node will maintain a copy of because it was verified through the consensus. What I just explained here is a very simple illustration of how the Bitcoin network operates. Obviously, there's a lot more detail that goes into the Bitcoin network and the distributed ledger, but that's beyond the scope of this video. If you are interested in knowing more about how this works, I recommend reading the original Bitcoin paper that was published in 2008, and you can find that paper in the link under this video. So now that you have a general understanding of how a distributed ledger works, I want to discuss blockchain. But before we do that, if you're getting value out of this video, please give it a like. It definitely helps out the channel. And if you want to see more videos like this, let us know in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can get notified when we release new content. So blockchain is essentially a digital ledger of all the transactions ever recorded on a network. You can think of this as blocks of transactions that are linked together through what is called a hash, which you can think of as a chain that connects the blocks together. In order for a block of transactions to be recorded on the blockchain, it must be agreed upon by the users or nodes of the network. In order to manipulate this blockchain, in other words, if someone wanted to alter the transaction history, they would need to control majority of the nodes in the network. Therefore, the more users acting as nodes in the network, assuming they are honest, the more secure the network will be. And that's why Bitcoin is considered the most secure blockchain, because this has such a large number of nodes that control most of the computer power in its network. So now that we've gone over distributed ledgers and blockchain, I want to discuss smart contracts. We've only touched upon the transactions between cryptocurrencies on a distributed ledger, but distributed ledgers also have the capability for a user to write code that will self-execute on a pre-specified term, which is what a smart contract is. So what does this mean? To give you an example of a smart contract, let's say that you want to rent out your rental property to someone. You decide that you don't want to go through a third party. So using a distributed ledger that allows you to write a smart contract, you specify for that for 100 units of the network's cryptocurrency, someone will have access to your rental property for 3 days. So the person wishing to rent the property will pay the 100 units of the cryptocurrency through this computer program that runs on the network, and then they will receive the door code to the rental property. Now that's a very simple example of a smart contract. They can also be used for a lot of other things. And one example of a cryptocurrency network that offers smart contracts is Ethereum. So now the last term that I want to talk about before we get into the final part of this video is tokenization. So what tokenization is as it pertains to cryptocurrencies, let me give you an example. Let's say we have a physical asset such as a rental property. You decide to offer ownership of that property in a form of a certain cryptocurrency. Let's say you value that property at $1 million and you tokenize it through a distributed ledger for 100 units of that cryptocurrency. Therefore, each unit of that cryptocurrency represents 1% ownership of that rental property. And the benefit of this process is that it bypasses the need to verify ownership through a centralized party by using the blockchain technology instead, which can be less costly and labor intensive if you were to go through another channel. Okay, so in the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I would give you my opinion about the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and how they would play a part in the future of portfolio management. So, should Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies be considered in someone's portfolio? And if so, which asset class should they fall under? I don't particularly view cryptocurrencies as a currency asset class because we really haven't seen mainstream adoption of people transacting in cryptocurrencies. It's not like I can go to my local grocery store and pay for my food in Bitcoin yet, but perhaps Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will become their own asset class, separate from currencies as we know it. In my opinion, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies share similarities with gold in terms of being a store of value. A store of value from declining currency or perhaps rising inflation. So I do believe that there are considerations for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies playing a part in someone's portfolio depending on the risk tolerance of that individual. So as these cryptocurrencies continue to grow and people gain a better understanding of how they work, I do see these intangible assets playing a bigger role in an individual's portfolio. All right, so we covered a lot, but definitely let me know in the comment section, what you think about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as an asset class. I'd be curious to know. And thanks for watching. Thanks.